My name is Michelle, and at 35 years old, I never thought my own family would try to steal what I worked so hard for. That night at dinner, when my sister-in-law Evatni smirked across the table and announced they were moving into my duplex, demanding I renovate the master bedroom to her specifications, I felt my entire world collapse. Everyone nodded like it was already decided, like my years of sacrifice meant absolutely nothing. I sat frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth, as my family casually discussed taking over my home. Before I continue my story, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, you will want to see how this revenge story ends. I have always been the responsible one in my family. After college, while my friends were hopping between jobs trying to find their passion, I secured a position as a junior accountant at a tech firm in the city. 12 years later, I am now a senior accounting manager with a comfortable salary. Comfortable, but not extravagant. In this economy, even a good salary only goes so far when you have dreams of financial independence. The duplex was my obsession for nearly a decade. I remember the exact moment I decided I wanted to own property instead of throwing money away on rent. It was after my landlord raised my rent for the third time in 4 years. I sat at my tiny kitchen table with the rent increase notice in my hand, calculating how much money I had paid him over the years. The number was staggering. I had paid him enough to buy half a house, yet I owned nothing. That night, I made a plan that would change my life forever. I would save every extra penny for a down payment, no more weekend brunches with friends, no more new clothes unless absolutely necessary, no more vacations or spa days. Instead, I picked up weekend bookkeeping jobs for small businesses. For 5 grueling years, I worked 7 days a week without a single break. When friends invited me out, I would calculate how many hours of work that dinner would cost me and usually declined. While others my age posted photos from tropical beaches and fancy restaurants, I stayed home building my savings account dollar by dollar. People called me boring, obsessed, even crazy, but I had a vision that kept me going through every sacrifice. The day I qualified for my mortgage was one of the proudest moments of my life. I had saved $60,000 for the down payment, entirely on my own. No help from family, no inheritance, no wealthy boyfriend, just pure determination, discipline, and sacrifice. I still remember standing in front of that duplex with the keys in my hand, tears streaming down my face. It was mine, all mine. The duplex itself is nothing fancy, but it sits in a quiet neighborhood just 15 minutes from downtown. 2 units, each with 2 bedrooms, separated by a shared wall. The plan was perfect. Live in one unit, rent out the other, and use that rental income to help pay the mortgage. Financial advisors call it house hacking. I call it the smartest decision I ever made. But the place needed serious work when I bought it. The previous owners had been an elderly couple who had not updated anything since the 1990s. I spent 6 exhausting months transforming it into a home. Every evening after work and every weekend, I was there painting walls, replacing flooring, and updating fixtures. I learned how to use power tools from YouTube videos. My hands were constantly covered in paint, my knees bruised from kneeling on hard floors, my back aching for hours of manual labor. But with each improvement, my pride grew stronger. This place was becoming mine in every sense of the word. Every tile I laid, every wall I painted, every fixture I installed was a piece of my soul embedded in those walls. I was not just buying a house. I was creating my sanctuary, my financial future, my independence. My family never quite understood my obsession with financial independence. My parents, Justin and Sophie, are traditional in many ways. They believe in family support, which in practice means the entire family constantly bailing out my younger brother, Ronan. At 32 years old, Ronan has never held a job for more than 18 months. His resume reads like a tour through every industry you can imagine. Retail, food service, office work, sales, construction, delivery driving. each new job was going to be the one that finally stuck until it inevitably did not. Ronan married Evatni when they were both 25. Evatni has never worked full-time since they had their twin daughters, Lily and Astra, 5 years ago. The twins are adorable little girls, but absolutely wild, clearly used to getting their way without any boundaries or consequences. Evatni always has a perfectly crafted excuse for why she cannot work. The twins need her at home. Childcare is too expensive. Her previous boss was terrible. The hours don't work for their family schedule. There is always something. Meanwhile, Ronan's inconsistent employment means they're always just one paycheck away from complete financial disaster. My parents have bailed him out countless times over the years. When Ronan and Evatni couldn't make rent, my parents paid it without question. When their car needed expensive repairs, my father handled it immediately. When the twins needed costly preschool tuition, my mother wrote the check without hesitation. I watched this pattern with growing concern and frustration, noticing how Ronan never seemed to learn financial responsibility because there were never any real consequences for his poor decisions. Every time he made a mistake, someone rescued him. Every time they overspent or under-earned, the family safety net appeared. It was enabling at its finest, and I could see it was never going to end. Despite all this dysfunction, I genuinely love my family. Ronan can be charming and funny when he wants to be. My parents mean well, even if their helping often becomes destructive enabling. And the twins bring pure joy to family gatherings with their boundless energy and infectious laughter. Family is complicated, messy, and sometimes painful, but they're still mine. When Ronan called me 3 weeks ago to say he had his hours cut at the warehouse where he was currently working, I genuinely sympathized. I even offered to help him update his resume and practice interview questions with him over the phone. Their current situation was indeed challenging. Ronan and Evatni were renting a 3-bedroom house at an inflated rate that was draining their already tight budget. Their lease was ending in 2 months, and with Ronan's reduced income from the warehouse, they were struggling to qualify for any new rental properties. Evatni had been complaining constantly on social media about their current landlord, claiming the house had problems that never got fixed and that they were being treated unfairly. Part of me wondered if they were just being difficult tenants, given their track record with previous rentals. The last time I had visited their place, I noticed toys scattered everywhere, mysterious stains on the carpet that had definitely not been there when they moved in, and a suspicious hole in the living room wall that Ronan swore was there when they first toured the property. I had my serious doubts about that claim. They did not seem to take care of places the way people do when they truly respect property. Perhaps that was exactly why I felt such immediate alarm at the idea of them anywhere near my carefully renovated duplex. I had put too much love and work into that place to watch it get destroyed by careless tenants, even if they were family. The week before the fateful dinner that would change everything, my mother Sophie had called me just to chat, or so I thought at the time. Looking back now, I can see she was gathering intelligence for what was coming. She had casually asked how my current tenant in the other unit was doing, seemed unusually interested in my rental income situation. I told her truthfully that Kevin, a quiet software engineer who had been renting from me for the past year, had given his notice. He was relocating for a job opportunity in another state. His lease would be up at the end of the month, and I was already preparing to advertise for a new tenant. The rental market was competitive, so I was not worried about finding someone quickly. Mom had made an odd comment at the time. "Oh, that is convenient timing." I did not think much of it then, assuming she meant it was good that I would have time to find a replacement without any gap in rental income. I should have realized she meant something entirely different. I should have seen the trap being set. Our monthly family dinners are a tradition that goes back to when Ronan and I were kids. Even though we are both adults now with our own lives, my mother insists we gather at her house once a month for a home-cooked meal and what she calls family time. Usually, I genuinely look forward to these dinners. Mom is an excellent cook, and despite our differences and occasional drama, I enjoy seeing everyone together. That particular Sunday in April started like any other family dinner. I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, bearing a bottle of wine and a store-bought cheesecake for dessert. Mom hugged me at the door, enveloping me in the familiar scent of her perfume, mixed with whatever delicious meal was cooking in the oven. Dad was planted in his usual spot in the living room, watching a basketball game with intense concentration. He raised his beer in greeting without looking away from the television screen. Ronan and Evadne arrived 15 minutes late, as they always do. The twins immediately ran to the playroom my parents had specially set up for them, their little feet thundering across the hardwood floors. Ronan collapsed dramatically on the couch next to Dad, as if the short drive from their house had completely exhausted him. Evadne headed straight to the kitchen to help Mom, though help might be too generous of a term. Mostly she stands around commenting on how she would do things differently, while contributing absolutely nothing useful. Dinner itself was Mom's famous roast chicken with all the traditional trimmings. The conversation flowed normally at first, covering all the usual topics. Mom asked about my work, and I shared some details about a big project I had just completed successfully. Dad talked enthusiastically about the retirement community golf tournament he had won the week before. Ronan mentioned he was thinking about getting into real estate sales, yet another new career aspiration I had never heard him mention before. It was during dessert when everything changed forever. I was just taking my first bite of the creamy cheesecake when Evadne cleared her throat dramatically, like an actress preparing to deliver an important monologue. The sound immediately put me on edge. Evadne never did anything without calculated intention. "So, Michelle, when we move into your duplex, I want the master bedroom completely renovated. New flooring, fresh paint, maybe even a walk-in closet. It is only fair since we will be living there long-term and need the space for our growing family." My fork froze exactly halfway to my mouth. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I processed her words, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Everyone at the table was looking at me expectantly, like this was a perfectly normal and reasonable request. My mother was nodding encouragingly with a bright smile. My dad had that satisfied expression he got when he thought a problem was being solved efficiently. Ronan was the only one who looked even slightly uncomfortable, suddenly finding his dessert plate fascinating. "I'm sorry, what?" I finally managed, setting my fork down very carefully on my plate. "What do you mean when you move into my duplex?" Evadne rolled her eyes slightly, as if I was being deliberately dense and wasting everyone's time with obvious questions. Since Kevin is moving out, the timing is absolutely perfect. We desperately need a place, and you have an empty unit just sitting there. It all works out beautifully for everyone involved. "But that unit is a rental property," I said slowly, feeling like I was explaining something painfully obvious to a child. "I need the rental income to help pay my mortgage. That is the entire point of owning a duplex." My mother reached over and patted my hand in that condescending way that made me feel like I was still 10 years old. "Sweetie, family is so much more important than money. Ronan and Evadne are having such a hard time right now. This is what families do for each other. Plus," Evadne continued smoothly, as if I had not even spoken, "we really need more space than just that rental unit. It only has 2 bedrooms, and with Lily and Astra growing so quickly, they desperately need separate rooms. So we thought we could take over your unit, since it is bigger and has that lovely master bedroom, and you could move into the smaller rental unit, or maybe find a cute little apartment somewhere else entirely." My jaw literally dropped open. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. They were not just expecting to move into my rental unit without paying anything. They wanted my actual home as well. The unit I lived in, the space I had poured my heart, soul, and life savings into creating exactly the way I wanted it. That is completely out of the question, I said, my voice coming out sharper and higher than I intended. That is my home, my actual home, where I live. Do not be so selfish, Michelle. My father spoke up for the first time, his tone holding that authoritative edge I remembered so clearly from childhood, the one that used to make me immediately fall in line. Your brother has a family to support, 2 little girls who need stability. You are just one single person. You certainly do not need all that space for yourself. I earned that space, I countered, feeling heat rising in my cheeks and my heart starting to pound. I worked for it. I saved for years and years for the down payment. I renovated every inch of it myself with my own 2 hands. I pay the mortgage every single month without fail. And we would help with the mortgage, Ronan finally spoke up, though he still would not meet my eyes directly. Eventually, once we get back on our feet financially. How long would that take exactly? And what exactly does help mean? Would you pay market rate rent? Would you sign an actual lease? Would you be legally responsible for any damages to my property? An uncomfortable silence fell over the entire table, like a heavy blanket. The only sounds were the distant voices of Lily and Astra playing in the other room, and the quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My mother finally broke the tension with a nervous, artificial laugh. Michelle, honey, these are just family business details we can work out later as we go along. The important thing right now is helping Ronan and Evadne in their time of genuine need. Plus, Evadne added, pulling out her phone with a triumphant smile, I already have some wonderful ideas for renovations that will make the space so much more functional for our family. She began swiping through photos on her screen. The kitchen definitely needs updating. Stainless steel appliances would be absolutely perfect. And Lily and Astra really need a proper play area. So we were thinking of knocking down the wall between the second bedroom and your little office to create one large, open space for them. Knock down walls? I echoed in complete disbelief, my voice barely above a whisper. In my house? The house that I own? Our family home, my father corrected firmly. This is a family matter, Michelle, and family property should be shared among family members. That is how we have always done things. I felt like I had somehow stepped through a portal into an alternate reality where all logic and basic property rights have been completely abandoned. It is not family property. It is my property. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. I am the only person legally responsible for it. Do not be so selfish, Michelle, my mother spoke up for the first time, her voice psyching with downward in sadness. Your brother has a family to support, 2 little girls who need stability. You are just one single person. You certainly do not need all that space for yourself. I earned that space, I insisted, my final out of self-control, holding firm against their assault. I worked for it. I saved for years and years for the down payment. I renovated every inch of it myself with my own 2 hands. I pay the mortgage every single month without fail. And we would help with the mortgage? Ronan finally spoke up, though he still would not meet my eyes directly. Eventually, once we get back on our feet financially. How long would that take? Exactly. And what exactly does help mean? Would you pay market rate rent? Would you sign an actual lease? Would you be legally responsible for any damages to my property? An uncomfortable silence fell over the entire table, like a heavy blanket. The only sounds were the distant voices of Lily and Astra playing in the other room, and the quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My mother finally broke the tension with a nervous, artificial laugh. Michelle, honey,
These are just family business details we can work out later as we go along. The important thing right now is helping Ronan and Evadne in their time of genuine need." Plus, Evadne added, pulling out her phone with a triumphant smile, "I already have some wonderful ideas for renovations that will make the space so much more functional for our family." She began swiping through photos on her screen. The kitchen definitely needs updating. Stainless steel appliances would be absolutely perfect. And Lily and Astra really need a proper play area. So we were thinking of knocking down the wall between the second bedroom and your little office to create one large, open space for them.
What about my tenant situation? I asked, trying desperately to stay calm while my world crumbled around me. I absolutely need that rental income. Without it, I would struggle to pay the mortgage on my own. "You make excellent money at your job." My father dismissed my very real financial concern with a casual wave of his hand. "You are smart with money. You will figure something out. Maybe get a roommate for the smaller unit after you move into it. Or you could rent a nice apartment somewhere closer to your office," Evadne suggested again, her tone implying this was actually a generous gift she was offering me. "There are some really cute studio apartments near downtown, very trendy and modern, perfect for a single professional woman like yourself." They had it all planned out, without ever consulting me. They had calmly decided to take over my home, displace me from the space I had created, eliminate my crucial rental income, and saddle me with expensive renovation costs. And they were acting like they were doing me some kind of enormous favor by allowing me to be part of this generous family arrangement. "This is absolutely not happening," I said, standing up abruptly from the table. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I am not giving up my home, and I'm certainly not giving up my rental income. I'm sorry about your housing situation, I truly am, but you need to find another solution that does not involve taking over my property." My mother's face immediately crumpled into an expression of pure devastation. "Michelle, how can you be so cold and heartless? This is your brother we are talking about, your own flesh and blood." "Yes, and I love him," I said, grabbing my purse from the counter with shaking hands. "But this request is completely unreasonable and unfair. I need to leave now. I have work to prepare for tomorrow morning." As I headed quickly toward the front door, I heard Evagne's perfectly calculated stage whisper to my mother, "I told you she would be difficult about this." The call from my mother came at exactly 7:30 the next morning, just as I was pouring my first desperately needed cup of coffee. I had been awake since 5, unable to stop thinking about the previous night's ambush. "Michelle," she began without even bothering to say hello, "we need to talk seriously about how you behaved last night. Leaving dinner early like that was extremely rude and hurtful to everyone." I took a deep breath, trying to center myself before responding. "Mom, I left because I was completely ambushed with an unreasonable demand to give up my home. I think my reaction was perfectly appropriate under the circumstances." "Nobody is asking you to give up anything," she said, her voice taking on that martyred tone I knew so well, the one that had manipulated me countless times throughout my childhood. "We are asking you to share with your family during their time of desperate need. That is what real families do for each other. They help without expecting anything in return." There is a huge difference between helping someone and letting them take complete advantage of you, I pointed out firmly. "Ronan and Evadne want to move into my home, pay absolutely no rent, renovate it to their personal specifications at my expense, and displace me from the space I have spent years creating for myself. How exactly is that reasonable or fair?"
You have always been so stubbornly independent, she sighed heavily, as if this were some kind of serious character defect I needed to overcome. Ever since you were a little girl, never wanting to share your toys with your brother, always keeping things for yourself instead of thinking about others. Is this really who you want to be, Michelle? Someone who puts material possessions above her own family? The guilt trip was so transparent and manipulative that it almost made me laugh. Almost. This is not about a childhood toy, Mom. This is about my home and my most significant financial investment. Would you give up your house if Ronan demanded it? Would you let him kick you out and renovate it however he wanted? That is completely different, she dismissed immediately. Your father and I are older. We have earned our place in this house. You are still young and flexible. You can easily adjust to a new living situation. Besides, you're single with no children to worry about. Ronan has a Lily and Astra to think about. Their needs have to come first. There it was, the underlying assumption that had always poisoned our family dynamics. Because I had chosen not to follow the traditional path of marriage and children, my life, my needs, and my hard-earned space were somehow less important and less deserving of respect. My answer is absolutely no, I said as firmly as I could manage. I am absolutely open to reasonable conversation, Dad. I always have been. Your mother and I have been thinking about this all night. This duplex situation could actually be a win-win opportunity for everyone involved. Ronan and Evadne get the stable housing they desperately need for the girls. You get to help your brother when he needs it most. And eventually, once they get back on their feet financially, they could even consider buying the duplex from you at a fair price. I nearly choked on my coffee. Buy it from me? With what money? They cannot even afford to rent anywhere. He waved away this inconvenient detail like it was meaningless. Well, down the road eventually, of course. The important point is that this is exactly
For a few weeks, I clarified, not 3 to 5 years. And Patricia didn't have to move out or pay for renovations. My father's face hardened. I thought I raised you better, Michelle. Your grandfather would be ashamed of this selfishness. I've sacrificed plenty, I said. I worked 7 days a week for 5 years to buy and renovate that duplex. I budgeted carefully to pay the mortgage. That's responsibility, not materialism. He stood abruptly, tossing money on the table. I hope you reconsider what kind of person you want to be. Your mother and I always thought you had a good heart. Instead of guilt, I felt anger. That evening, Ronan called, sounding hesitant. About last night, Evadne pushed for the family dinner ambush. She thought social pressure would work. So, you tried to manipulate me? I said sharply. We're in a tough spot, he admitted. Rent is killing us, my hours got cut, and we can't get approved elsewhere. The duplex seemed perfect. Perfect for you, not me. I need that rental income, and I'm not paying thousands for renovations. We could help with the mortgage, he offered. And when exactly would that be? You've been waiting for things to turn around for years. Meanwhile, I'd lose my home. He paused. But we're family. I'd do the same for you. Really? Would you give up your home and income because I demanded it? He trailed off. My answer is no, I said firmly. I can help you find affordable housing or with your resume, but not give up my duplex. Moments later, an email from Evadne arrived, a 3-page renovation plan, new kitchen, stainless steel appliances, tearing down walls, repainting, all to her taste, with costs split 50-50. The audacity was breathtaking. The next day, I met Sarah for lunch and told her everything. Let me get this straight, she said. They want you to give up your home, rental income, and pay for renovations so they can live there free?
And your parents think you're unreasonable? Yes, I sighed. Michelle, this is insane. You worked hard for that duplex. Helping family isn't the same as letting them exploit you. Do the math. See what this would really cost. Her advice made sense. Maybe hard numbers would finally put everything in perspective.
The next day, I scheduled an appointment with David, a financial advisor recommended by a colleague at work. I brought all my paperwork, mortgage statements, rental income records, property tax information, and utility bills. David reviewed everything carefully, then looked up at me with genuine concern in his expression. Miss Michelle, he said seriously, based on these numbers, allowing your brother's family to move into your rental unit without paying market rate rent would cost you approximately $20,000 per year in lost income. That is income you currently rely on to help pay your mortgage. The number hit me like a physical blow. And if I moved out of my own unit as well? I asked, wanting to understand the complete financial picture. He did some quick calculations on his computer. You would be looking at a total loss of about $40,000 annually once you factor in the additional rent you would need to pay somewhere else, plus losing income from both units. I felt genuinely sick to my stomach. What about the renovation costs they are requesting? David looked at Vandy's detailed list and grimaced. Based on current construction prices, the changes they are proposing would easily run between $25,000 and $30,000. If they want high-end finishes, possibly much more. The math was staggering. So over the 3 to 5 years they want to stay, I could be looking at a financial loss of between $145,000 and $225,000, David confirmed grimly, plus potential property damage, decreased property value if renovations are done poorly, and serious complications if they refuse to leave after the agreed time period. I had never imagined the numbers would be so devastating. This was not a small family favor. This was a massive financial sacrifice that could potentially ruin my financial stability for years. There is also the legal aspect you need to consider, David added carefully. Without a formal lease agreement with clear terms, you would have very little legal protection if problems arise. And in many states, after someone lives in a property for a certain period, removing them can become extremely complicated legally. That was an angle I had not fully considered. I decided I needed to consult with the real estate attorney to understand the legal risks as well. Jennifer, the attorney I met with later that week, was even more direct in her assessment. Family arrangements without clear written agreements are an absolute legal nightmare, she told me bluntly. I have seen countless cases where family members refuse to leave when asked, stop contributing financially as promised, or cause significant property damage with no legal recourse for the property owner. What would you recommend in my specific situation? I asked. Honestly, do not do it at all, she said without hesitation. But if you feel absolutely compelled for family reasons, at minimum, you should require a formal lease agreement with market rate rent specified, a substantial security deposit, clear terms about who pays for what expenses, and an absolutely unambiguous end date with legal consequences for overstaying. And what if they refuse to sign such an agreement? Jennifer gave me a knowing look. Then they are not planning to honor any verbal agreements either. That tells you everything you need to know about their true intentions. Armed with this professional advice, I spent the weekend researching online. I found countless forum discussions from people who had allowed family members to move in. Over the next few days, my family's pressure intensified. Relatives I rarely spoke to suddenly called with the same lines. Family should help family. It was obvious my parents had spread a distorted version of events, casting me as the selfish villain. Weddıng fueled things on social media, posting about selfish relatives who put money over family. drawing sympathy from outsiders. Even family friends called to urge me to reconsider. The coordinated guilt campaign was impressive and deeply hurtful. For the first time, I doubted myself. Was I unreasonable? Selfish? Should I give in just to keep the peace? Sitting alone in my home, I felt torn. This place was the result of years of sacrifice, yet being branded the family villain was almost as painful as losing it. Determined, I began preparing for the inevitable confrontation, writing out key points, researching affordable housing for Ronan, and rehearsing responses. Most importantly, I reminded myself, protecting my home was not selfishness, but self-respect. A week later, my mother called. Sunday dinner. Everyone will be there. We're resolving this as a family. When I arrived, the formal china was out. My aunts and uncle were present. It was clearly a tribunal. Ronan and Evatnine came last, carrying a thick folder. My father opened with authority. We are here to discuss this duplex situation and reach a family agreement. My mother tried to sound soothing, but Evatnine immediately handed out glossy floor plans. These are our detailed plans for optimizing the space, she announced. The diagrams showed major renovations, even an addition. We've gotten quotes. Not forever, Evadne interjected quickly. Just until we get completely back on our feet financially. 3 years, maybe 4 at the most. My mother nodded enthusiastically. And we have already worked out the perfect solution for where you could live, dear. There is a lovely studio apartment available in that new complex near your office. It is only $1,200 a month, which is very reasonable for the location. I felt like I had stepped into a complete alternate reality. They had planned every detail of dismantling my life without any input from me whatsoever. My father pulled out an official-looking document from his own folder. We have even drawn up a family agreement, he said, sliding it across the table to me, just to make everything crystal clear and avoid any future misunderstandings. I glanced down at the paper with growing horror. It was titled Family Housing Arrangement and outlined in formal language how I would allow Ronan and Evadne to occupy my entire duplex, rent-free, for a period of not less than 3 years. I would contribute to renovation costs and relocate to housing of comparable value. The only mention of any payment from them was a vague reference to potential future rent contributions as financial situation improves. This is not a legally binding document, I said firmly, pushing it back across the table. And even if it were, I would never sign it. This is a family matter, not a legal one, my father said, dismissively. The point is simply to have our arrangement clearly documented in writing so there are no misunderstandings later. The only misunderstanding here is that I have agreed to any part of this. I have not agreed to anything. This is my property, purchased with my money, maintained with my labor. I am not giving it up. Don't be so dramatic about everything, Evadne rolled her eyes. Nobody is asking you to give anything up permanently. We are just asking you to share it temporarily while we get established. Sharing implies equal contribution, I pointed out. What exactly are you contributing to this arrangement besides demands and expectations? An uncomfortable silence fell over the entire table. Finally, Ronan spoke up weakly. We are family, Michelle. That should be enough. Before I could respond, Evadne dropped another bombshell that made my blood run cold. Besides, we have already given our landlord notice at our current place. He has already found new tenants to replace us. We have to be completely moved out by the 30th of this month. I stared at her in complete disbelief. You gave notice on your apartment before you had confirmed housing arrangements? She shrugged as if this were perfectly reasonable. We knew you would come around once you had proper time to think about it rationally.
Family does not let family become homeless, especially when there are young children involved. We're going to need your keys, Ronan added, his tone suggesting this was a completely normal and reasonable request. So we can start moving some of our boxes in this weekend and get the girls settled before school starts. That was the exact moment when something fundamental snapped inside me. The cumulative weight of their entitlement, manipulation, and complete disregard for my boundaries became too much to bear. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor in the suddenly quiet room. "No," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heartbeat. "Not only am I not giving you my keys, I am not giving you my home. Not the rental unit, not my personal unit, not any part of it at all." "Michelle," my mother gasped dramatically, "sit down immediately. We are trying."
6 months have passed since that tense confrontation, bringing changes I could never have predicted when I stood my ground against my family's demands. The journey has been challenging but ultimately transformative for everyone involved. The first few weeks after our final confrontation were painfully silent. No calls from my parents, no family dinner invitations, not even casual social media interactions. Evadne posted several vague comments about toxic family members who abandon you in your time of greatest need that were clearly aimed at me. The isolation stung deeply, but I focused on my work, my home, and rebuilding my sense of inner peace. I immediately changed the locks on both units and found excellent new tenants within 10 days. Marcus and Jennifer, a young married couple who both work as nurses, proved to be everything a landlord could hope for. They pay rent consistently on time, communicate clearly about any issues, and even help maintain the shared garden area between our units. About 6 weeks after our confrontation, my mother called. Her voice was subdued, lacking the usual guilt-inducing tone I had grown so accustomed to hearing. "I have been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened," she said quietly. "I still wish you could have found a way to help Roman and Evadne more than you did, but I am beginning to understand why you felt you could not give up your home." It was not quite a full apology, but it represented real progress. We agreed to meet for lunch the following week, just the two of us. That lunch was initially awkward, but ultimately civil. We carefully avoided discussing the Duplex situation directly, instead focusing on neutral topics like my work and her volunteer activities. By the end of our meal, a tentative bridge had been rebuilt between us. My father took much longer to come around to accepting my decision. It was nearly 4 months before he would speak to me directly. When he finally did call, it was with grudging respect rather than warmth. "You stood your ground firmly. I did not agree with your final decision, but you defended your position well. Your grandfather would have approved of your backbone, even if he might not have agreed with your choice." Coming from my father, this represents remarkably high praise. The most surprising and positive change came from Ronan and Evadne themselves. Unable to move into my duplex as planned, they were forced to find their own realistic solution. They ended up renting a 3-bedroom apartment at Riverdale Commons, the exact complex I had recommended during our confrontations. The monthly rent was indeed significantly lower than their previous place, which immediately eased some of their crushing financial pressure. More importantly, the experience seemed to trigger genuine new responsibility in Ronan. He applied for and successfully obtained a promotion at the warehouse, moving from basic loading dock work to a logistics coordinator position with better pay and much more regular hours. He also took on weekend inventory work at a local retailer, using that extra income to systematically pay down their accumulated credit card debt. Evadne, faced with the harsh reality that no one was going to rescue them financially, finally took a part-time job at the twins' elementary school. Working during school hours meant childcare was not an issue, and the added income made a tangible difference in their monthly budget. I found healthy ways to help that maintained appropriate boundaries. Once a week, I have Lily and Astra over for dinner and homework help, giving Ronan and Evadne a much-needed break while building a stronger relationship with my nieces. I taught Ronan how to create and follow a realistic household budget, a practical skill our parents had never bothered to teach either of us.
When they needed to replace their failing refrigerator, I loaned them the money with a clear written agreement for monthly repayments, which they have honored faithfully. Family dinners eventually resumed, but with a completely different dynamic. My parents seemed to have gained genuine new respect for my personal boundaries, no longer treating my life choices as subject to family committee approval. The most meaningful moment came 2 months ago when Ronan and I met for coffee, without our spouses or parents present. "I need to thank you," he said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, "for not letting us move into your duplex." I nearly choked on my latte. "That is definitely not what I expected to hear from you." He smiled ruefully. "Yeah, well, I've had months to think about it clearly. If you had given in to our demands, we never would have been forced to figure out how to solve our own problems. I would still be working the loading dock and complaining about my bad luck. Avatni would still be waiting for someone else to fix our situation instead of taking action herself." "You have really stepped up impressively," I acknowledged. "I am genuinely proud of the changes you've made." "It was not always easy at first," he admitted honestly, "but when you made it absolutely clear that we could not just take over your place, it forced us to find our own solutions for the first time in years. For the first time in my adult life, I actually feel like I'm in control of my own future, not just waiting around for the next family bailout." That conversation healed something deep and important between us that had been damaged for years by